Oh, hello there, everybody. It's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast, Commuting with Craig. There is so very much to talk about. The Cleveland Browns won on Saturday night. It was a super exciting game. They beat Denver on the road, 17-16. They took a game that they would have found a way to lose in so many other scenarios in the history of this team, especially going back to 99, and they won it. They made mistakes. They took shots. They went, Greg Williams goes for it on 4th and 1 with a 1-point lead instead of kicking a field goal to put them up by 4, forcing the Broncos to score a touchdown. He throws caution to the wind. Nick Chubb gets stood up. The Browns lose that bet, but they win the tournament. They won anyway. It's absolutely, unequivocally a turning point for this Browns team. This whole season is a turning point for this Browns team. And it's absolutely incredible because I keep telling you about Baker Mayfield and how he makes it all worth it, but it's more than that. It's more than that. This entire team, and Jason Lloyd talked to Jarvis Landry after the game and had in his 25, thoughts, whatever they call those things for the Browns, final thoughts, 24 thoughts on the Browns game. It talked about to Jarvis Landry about how they said, fuck the coaches. And he said, no offense to them. We love our coaches, but we need to take this thing and put it on our own shoulders. And that's what the Browns have done. As a team, as players, they've taken ownership of this team. And yes, Greg Williams is doing a very nice impression of an NFL head coach, but any talk about Greg Williams taking over for good needs to just end. It's goofy. If they can find a way to keep him and Freddie Kitchens, great. But he's not the head coach. And Jarvis Landry tells you in his statement that the players have taken control of this team and taken control of their own destiny, and that's exactly what the Browns needed to do. Unfortunately, it's not enough with all that went on this season and firing the coach and the early losses and trying to start Tyrod Taylor and everything else. This team just wasn't ready to make the playoffs this year, I guess. And there are going to be a lot of Browns fans and commentators who talk about what could have been or should have been if the Browns had fired Hugh Jackson prior to this season, and if they had not come into the season with Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley and whatever disaster that was that you needed to be unwound midway through the season. I don't think you can look at things like that. The Browns needed to keep Hugh Jackson because of Jimmy Haslam. Don't blame anybody but Jimmy Haslam. He's the reason that the Browns had to keep Hugh Jackson because he fired Chud after one season, less than a calendar year after giving him the job, basically. He's the one who messed up with Pettin and Farmer and Banner and Lombardi and all this. I mean, he's the one. It's on him. When certain team owners or team executives say, well, the buck stops with me, I think that's usually just a line, something that you can throw away because it's a cliche. But in this case, Jimmy Haslam's right. It does start with him. It's all his fault. Hugh Jackson coming into this season and the fact that the Browns needed to retain him, that was all Jimmy Haslam's fault. It's due to the record that he had with his coaching staff and his front office as an owner. And I think the Browns are really, really well off in looking for their next head coach. They've got the front office in place. They've got the quarterback in place. Everything's looking up. It should be the best coach search they've ever had. And I know I sound like a broken record because I've already said that. But this idea that this season is somehow a failure now because the Browns sniffed the playoffs and they should have sniffed it sooner. They definitely should have made it. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you can look at Hugh Jackson and say, Yeah, if it had been any other coach, they would have beat the Raiders. Like, sometimes the journey is necessary. The Browns needed to fail under Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley. They needed the wake-up call of having him fired. That was the only catalyst that would have had Jarvis Landry and the players finally just taking ownership of the team and ownership of their own record and personal responsibility for their own future. To sit there and say that it's the butterfly effect. You can't just change that one thing and all of a sudden feel like, all right, now the Browns would have made the playoffs and they would have been challenging for the AFC Championship game. And it's nice and all, but I think it was an organizational decision to start Tyrod Taylor. And I think it was a good one. I think protecting Baker Mayfield was the right decision. Apparently he didn't need that much protecting, but we found that out. You know, it was due to injury in the Jets game, but we found that out, and it's okay. It's okay. Everything that's happening with the Browns right now is good. And I don't want to sit here and try and find the bad in the good. We usually try and find the good and the bad when it comes to the Browns. With the first glimmer of actual good, I'm not going to sit here and dwell on the negative. I can't. I just can't. The Browns have so much talent. They have so much talent that should be blossoming next year and the year after. They still have plenty of assets and plenty of cash in the cap. I've never felt better about the evaluator in John Dorsey and Alonzo Highsmith and Elliott Wolf. I've never felt better about their prospects in a coaching search because I think everybody's going to want this job. But, you know, you just sometimes have to go through it. You have to go through it the way you went through it. You can't go back in time and change. Would this team be playing this well if they hadn't gone through the ups and downs of Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley and that power struggle where both of those guys lost? And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and try and defend Hugh Jackson. He's indefensible at this point. But it's just not that simple. You've got 50 plus, you know, borderline 60 plus players and another 15 to 20 coaches and staff and key people, key personnel and front office on top of that. Don't look back. Don't look back. Don't try and imagine a scenario where Sashi Brown deserved to stay or that Hugh Jackson hadn't been kept. It's silly. Let it go. It's time to let it go. The Browns have really great prospects moving forward. Now, I want to talk about the Indians too, because there's a desire maybe to cast everything the Dolans do, everything that they do, cast it as a cash-saving business decision. And I think the Browns, I've got the Browns on the brain. I think the Indians made a lot of moves that saved a lot of cash over the last week, but they had to shake this team up. They couldn't just come back into the 2019 season the way they finished the 2018 season where they failed in the playoffs. The way that they failed in the playoffs in 2017. They needed to switch things up, and sometimes you have to take what might look like a half step back. And Edwin Encarnacion is a supremely talented former MVP, just a great player, making a lot of money. But name the one time he had a clutch hit. I mean, I'm sure there are some. He doesn't seem like the guy who was going to put the Indians over the top. If he was, he would have done it already. Like, he's not getting any younger. And if you're going to make a change on the team, would you rather make a change at your former MVP, highest priced free agent in the history of the club, first baseman / DH, or would you rather do it with the starting pitchers? I mean, I would rather flop out the first baseman and start making changes there. I'd rather flop that guy out and start thinking about the bullpen or the outfield or betting on younger players, if the Indians are going to take this team that's in a contention window and put it over the top, it's going to come from an unlikely source. It's not going to be a top free agent like Bryce Harper. It's not going to be somebody that we already know in all likelihood, unless you're one of these guys who's super deep into the Browns, I keep saying Browns, deep into the Indians, the tribe farm system. Unless you know the guys who are patrolling the outfield in Lake County, Akron, and Columbus, you probably don't know the name of the next player who's going to make a huge impact on the Indians' playoff chances. But my point is that you weren't just going to run back the 2018 team with Encarnacion and Michael Brantley and all these guys and just think that something was going to change. That old cliche about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting different results. Kudos to the Indians for not doing that. And yeah, they're saving money right now, but we don't know what they're going to do with that money. We don't know if they're going to try and roll through the first quarter or half of the season, and then use those resources at the trade deadline. But I, for one, am super happy that they're not just rolling this team back. They're not just rolling the 2018 version of the team straight back into the next season, even though they could probably just do that, win the division, make the playoffs, and then, see what happens. I don't want to watch that. I want them to change things up. It's not that old adage, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If you're not fixing it, it's probably broken or going to break soon. And I'm happy the Indians are doing that, even if it looks like cash dump. Even if it looks like just cost savings. I don't believe that's what they're doing. I think this group wants to win desperately because they've got Lindor and Jose Ramirez, and they didn't see all these guys coming, and they've been very fortunate in so many respects with these guys that I think they are being super aggressive trying to win now. And while it may look like a cash dump, I don't think that's what's going on. It's okay to bring that up and maybe suggest that might be what is occurring, but I think your better judgment has to prevail that that's not what's happening at all. I don't know what the team is going to look like when they show up to start the season, but I'm happy it's not going to look like the exact same team that showed up in 2018. This is not exactly, but this is the plan. The right plan. I don't know if they'll execute it well enough to put the team over the top and change our fortunes in the World Series, but they weren't going to catch the Astros by rolling back the same team. They weren't going to catch the Yankees, who they lost to in the prior postseason, just by rolling back the same team. So we'll see what else they do. I think it's a positive start. I think it's all part of a healthy plan. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's the right idea. So thanks so much for listening. Talk to you guys very soon. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. I think Hanukkah is over now. Happy Hanukkah, all that stuff. We'll talk to you soon. It's been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.